I ain't got no goals. I was born to stay in the hood.
Are you gonna stay in the hood for the rest of your life?
I might.
How you gonna make money?
The government gonna take care of me. All I gotta do is have 8 kids and I'm Gucci. Do you know how much food stamps I can get with 8 kids? The hood is the land of opportunities. I need a child, cheese, Chinese food, and diamonds in the same wall.
Yo, now we're done.
I ain't got no goals.
So yeah, right. So first and foremost, I give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rekakodash. We said on apostle and let's agree most on rule, teachers of apostle and shoot. And we see salutation, so the Akam was push you within our truth and sincerity, day in and day out, and constantly in season or the season. We say Shalom. Once again, good entire video here, and this basically touch on that video you see on the screen. It said the CIA has won. You know, the caption of the video is that the CIA has won. Right now, when you go
Opportunities. I know goals. I was born to stay in the
you know, in this kid talk, in this child talk, it goes to show that how terrible parenting is. You know, terrible parenting is right now. You know, when it comes to instructing the children to be in the right way. You know, when they listen, even if this is a skit, right? Even if this is a skit, there's a lot of kids that think like this. You know, because why? They're not instructed to be not being instructed the right thing, not being taught the right thing. You know, the parents, they themselves, they want to live like children. You know, the fathers want to be killers, you know, robbers, stealers. The mothers want to be whores, you know, prostitutes or whatever it may be, right? And the child, you know, seeing that and not being instructed the right way, they come out to see these things, right? So as you're seeing, you know, you're hearing what the child seen in the video is.
I ain't got no goals. I was born to stay in the hood.
Well, he had no goals. He born to stay in the hood, right?
Are you gonna stay in the hood for the rest of your life?
I might.
How you gonna make money?
The government gonna take care of me.
Here in them cities, since the government gonna take care of me, because you hear that from Jakes, you know. You hear that from Jakes, especially these women when it comes to the government saying about them, the cars and so forth. You know, this is the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 23. It says, "Has thou children, instruct them, and bow down their neck from their youth." Now when you look up the word instruct, right? Instruct, right? Instruct meaning, right? Looking it up on Google, it says tell or order someone to do something, especially in a formal or official way. It says teach, to teach someone a subject or a skill. It say employ or authorize, right? It say give information, but it says constructed, right? Constructed, equipped or taught, right? Or taught. It say what is the meaning of the word instruct? It say to furnish with knowledge, especially by a systematic method. Teach, train, educate. Teach, train, educate. And again, as the scripture said here, has thou children, instruct them. So you're supposed to be what? Teaching and training a child to do what? Be in the proper way, right? Not to act like this, because a lot of these kids today, you know, how they're being taught or how they're being instructed is by what the internet tell them. You know, the parents, they themselves is an example of that, right? They follow the internet guidelines of how to be, and they teach your children the same thing. And sometimes they don't even teach your children. They give them the phone and have the child watching TikTok, have the child watching YouTube or whatever site they may be on these days, you know, Twitch, all these sorts of things, right? All these sorts of things, they have them watching, and that is what they watch, and they how to put it fair, they copy it, you know. So they listen to these songs, they listen to these things. They want to be gangsters, want to be thugs. They could see face wrap up, right? Wrap up and talk and these stuff, And where we hearing it from is he hearing it from online. He hearing it from his parents, so they're not instructing them in the proper way. They say instruct them and bow down their neck from their youth, right? And bow down the neck, you know. Let me get a scripture here. Let me get a scripture in the book of Proverbs, right? It says this in the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 6. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, right? And when you look up the word, again, when we now look up the word instruct, it also goes to the word what? To train, to teach, to educate, right? So it's train up a child in the way he should go. And that's how it's supposed to be with the child, you know, especially if it's a man of the Lord, right? You have to train a child in the proper way. And that proper way is what? Following the Lord. But if you come to tell these kids about the Bible, if you come to tell these kids about, you know, the Lord, they don't want to hear that. You know, what they want to hear about is something on Twitch and YouTube Live and these stuff. Because that is what they're into. Because the parents, the parents not training the child the proper way. You know, that the kids being disobedient. And that is why now you could see the person said, well, the CIA has won. Because that's something Jake does do. Jake does blame the CIA. No, we know the CIA have a major part to play, because our enemy obviously did certain things when it comes to the family, you know, in the Israelite household. We know that. So this person put up it here. The CIA offers work as scientists, support staff, engineers, economists, right? Mathematicians, secretaries, accountants, inventors, right? Architects, psychologists, police officers, editors, graphic designers, auto mechanics, historians, museum creators, and more. So yeah, the CIA have a big part to play in certain things. But if you was growing your child in a proper way, right, they wouldn't be like this, right? So you have to train your child the proper way. You have to instruct your child in the proper way. It's a train up a child in the way you should go, right? In the way you should go, not the way the internet want them to go, not the way the enemy want them to go, the way he should go, right? You see, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Yeah, because when he get old, I know he know the right thing, you know. So that's what just child talking about Section 8, talking about cars, talking about, you know, the hood of the land of opportunity, right? That even though it may be a skit, as I said, you know, there's a lot of kids that think that way, right? They think that way, right? We are over the period of months, we have seen, like even in the island here, seen kids, you know, literal kids, you know, dying because why? They want to be criminals, right? They want to be criminals. So it goes to show that they are the parents not training the child in the proper way, right? So now going back now to the book of Sirach, right? Go to the book of Sirach, chapter 30. They say, he that loveth his son causeth him oft to feel the rod, that he may have joy of him in the end. So yeah, your child sort of misbehavior and make him, well, you gotta get some licks, right? But we know, according to the laws that implemented from the government, you know, that they can't do that. You know, they could call services for you to basically make you lose the child and so forth, and so on. Right? It say, he that chastiseth his son shall have joy in him, and shall rejoice of him among his acquaintance. Yeah, because why? Your child, you know, he remember that chastising that he get, right? He remember it, and he wouldn't do the wrong. But, you know, that way sometimes, like for example, us, when we grew up, we may grow up in a time where we used to be chastised from our parents or our elders, right? And you know, if you go do something wrong, you remember that chastisement they get for doing that particular thing, and you wouldn't do it, right? You know, discipline, being disciplined, that's something these kids don't have. No respect, no discipline, and so forth. But it goes into the parents not teaching them the proper thing, right? It say, he that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy, and that is such an important thing. It say, he that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy, and before his friends he shall rejoice of him. So it goes into like what people saying the CIA has won, right? Because why? The infiltration it did onto the Israelite household, you're seeing it today. Whereas the kids out of order, the home out of order, the parents out of order, and so forth and so on, right? But as the scripture say, he that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy. So yeah, and that is one of the things that they want to do. A parent, a man that correcting his children, having them growing up in the proper way, they'll have to use words like toxic masculinity, and he's a father, and stressing all the children and all this kind of stuff. But you just making sure your children grow up the proper way, So that way it say, he that teaches the son grieveth the enemy. Yeah, it's how to grieve the enemy, right? But when they look at the word grieve, right, grieve it. Let me get here quick. Hate when I do it like this. Connection has been interrupted. Why not getting it here? Way? Saying look up grieve it. They say to give pain of mind to. They say to wound the feelings, right? To wound the feelings, and that is where you do that is where you do the enemy, right? Right. So he that teaches the son grieveth. He that teaches the son grieveth the enemy, and before his friends he shall rejoice of him. Yeah, because why your child is taught the proper thing, right? When like for example, when I watch these kids today, you see how much social media has a major play into how they think, how they operate, and it's literally little monstrous children. You understand? Children like this, they talk, they act the same way, right? And that is why this person said, well, the child has been failed by his parents here, because as a parent, you're supposed to be teaching your child the proper thing, right? But literally, as this person said, the CIA has won. Yeah, they made the enemy. They didn't grieve the enemy. They made the enemy win, right? They made the enemy win. So it say, though his father died, yet he is as though he were not dead, for he had left one behind him that is like himself. So yeah, so you teach your child the proper thing, and even when you pass on and die, your son continue in the way that he was taught, and he would continue to teach his child the same thing and continuing. Sometimes again, they be harsh, but in this society, the warrior, the pass certain laws, corporal punishment has been taken away, right? So it had no punishment for your child, and they give your children more power in the household than you, So it say while he lived, he saw and rejoiced in him, and when he died, he was not sorrowful. Yeah, because why? He know. He left one like unto himself. He know that, hey, my child here, he good. He not like these wicked parents outside here that they know that the children doing all sorts of wickedness, but they're saying he good, he think. He was a good boy. He didn't do nobody no wrong, not knowing the child is serial killers. Right? That is why they're always sorrowful, because why? They didn't teach the child in the right way, and it's such an important thing, because when a child do wrong, it is reflect onto the parents, right? It say verse 6, it say he left behind him an avenger against his enemies, and one that shall requite kindness to his friends. He that maketh too much of his son shall bind up his wounds, and his bowels will be troubled at every cry. Yeah. Every time your child do something, you're always pampering, he do something wrong, what they're telling him, nah, he wasn't wrong. No, you had to correct your child. You continue to do that. You come out like this. You say, an horse not broken becometh headstrong, and a child left to himself will be willful. Yeah. Right? It's a cock thy child, and he shall make thee afraid. Play with him, and he will bring thee to heaviness. Yeah, you had to know that you're a parent, and you had to be strict. You understand? That they're a child. They're your child. That is not your friend. That is not nothing. That is your child. Right? So you don't want your child to bring heaviness onto you. You don't want to play with him. And that is what these modern day parents do. They play, they cock at their child, they They let them continue to do all sort of wickedness without correction, right? And then next thing you know, they're like this. They're in videos, they're in rap videos with guns and so forth. I was watching that video yesterday, and I feel I might do a video on that. Is an aunt, an aunt and she nephew, and the nephew ended up dying because he chose a life of crime. He wanted to be a gangbanger, but she was showing video clips, like steps showed his life and how he just switched. And when you watch the video, it goes to show that nobody wasn't correcting him, nobody wasn't training him. So what did the streets? You understand? So you say, laugh not with him, lest thou have sorrow with him, and lest thou gnash thy teeth in the end. So yeah, don't laugh with him. They try, they have to be serious, right? They say, give him no liberty in his youth, and wake not at his follies. Yeah, you see all this thing he talking here. As is a father or a mother, this correction one time. Don't laugh. Don't give him no liberty to talk this or that bullshit, because again, even though I don't know if it's a skit or not, but most likely it could be a skit. But a lot of Jake, a lot of Israelite children, they like this. They love this, because why? The parents giving any liberty? He's just a kid. What they love to say? He's just a kid. He will grow out of that. No, he grow into it. He grow out, he grow into it. Right? Because why? They give him liberty. Right? So he say, give him no liberty in his youth, and wake not at his follies. He say, bow down his neck while he is young, and beat him on the sides while he is a child. Lest he wax stubborn and be disobedient unto thee, and so bring sorrow to thine heart. And I remember when I was young, when a child misbehaving, like you have a friend that might you're going to school, you have a friend that might misbehave, or some other child misbehaving, they're acting out, whatever it is. The first statement used to come out, the elder's mouth, or even your mouth, might say, them parents making he do that, right? Them parents making him behave so, because why? They didn't bow down his neck, So why? He become what? He becomes stubborn, right? Because it had no correction there. He could continue to do what it is, right? It says, chastise thy son and hold him to labor, lest his lewd behavior be an offense unto thee. Right? So yeah. It goes to show how important it is that we're to train our child and not have the internet, not have the social norms, they like to say, train a child, right? So you don't want a child come on the internet talking all this sort of bullshit. So hey, once again, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakodash. We said amongst our person, Elos, a great Muslim ruler, teaches our person truth. And we say salutations, so the Akamus, the push you with on truth and sincerity, day in and day out, and constantly, in season of season, we say, Shalom.